In today's video, we're going to talk about Desmond. Desmond is a two-timer Hall of Famer for the consulting program, where you saw him a couple months ago when he landed his first couple deals, but this time he is back with a bigger and better than ever success story, where he was able to sign a multi-8-figure Y Combinator funded company, making more than $20,000 in his first month working with them. So stick around, because in this video, we're going to talk about the full journey of what that looked like to finding this company, how he used everything that we teach in the program to sign them on a consulting contract, and what that actual implementation execution looked like. I'll see you there. All right, what's going on, guys? Caleb here, and I'm on with Desmond. Desmond, how are you doing?
Doing good. Good to be back.
Glad, certainly. So today we're going to talk about your newest FSC deal. So for those of you guys who might be new here, Desmond has been a part of the FSC program for, how many months now?
I think,
Not a year, but rolling close to it.
oh yeah, close to like 9-10 months, maybe.
Yeah. And he's back with another deal. Not only did he have the record for the fastest closing, but I think now he has the record for the actual largest client that we've worked with or seen anybody work with. I think I've worked with a company that was doing 12 million a year. Granted, this is different that it's raising money, but I think the valuation of the business is definitely sizable. So we're going to talk about the story of how it was you were able to go out and find that. And I think like what that journey looked like of going from a account executive remote salesperson into, I think, this more formalized consulting, now working with like real and established businesses. So I guess let's take it back for those of you who are seeing Desmond for their first time. I guess, Desmond, like what was your like backstory prior to Fractional Sales Consulting?
Yeah, for sure. So for context, prior to linking up with Caleb, obviously we'd been in the same circles through, like growth consulting and different masterminds and whatnot. But my background has primarily been in enterprise software sales and venture capital. So I've been primarily serving as an enterprise account executive or kind of a go-to-market strategist for various VC-backed startups throughout Silicon Valley and DC. Spent 7 years doing that, and then you came out with the FSC offer, and I was thinking about ways to just get more leverage in how I was doing that and being able to do that for multiple offers. So that's
Yeah, certainly. And I believe too, before joining this, you were considering one of my competitors as well, who is actually no longer even offering their program. So it goes to show it's timing the market as opposed to timing the market, right? So,
yeah.
but yeah, what was your initial what were your expectations for FSC, and then how were those kind of met? I think coming into that program, I know it's been like 9 months now, but if you can kind of go back to when you were first starting.
Yeah, it's really fun to see how everything has culminated. I obviously made the best choice because just seeing like the overall success that FSC has had, the community that you built, kind of like a little cult following, if you will, like really been remarkable to see the growth. So kudos to you for one, just very, very proud of the progress you've had, especially cracking 100K. And then in terms of like the service delivery, it really was even more successful than I could have imagined, just in the sense that it really made me think more in first principles about how I was thinking about the most valuable activities I can take every day as a go-to-market operator. It's not necessarily all the activities that I'm doing as an individual contributor. And I think that this shifted me into a new paradigm where I realized like I can almost exist in like 3 parts of the organization at once. And it really taught me how to think about creating assets and systems and processes and protocols that will allow me to create sort of a flywheel between marketing, sales, and product, really the holy trinity. And I think that's really where, the change happened.
No, definitely. And I think I remember too, when we were thinking about some of your initial clients, the way that you kind of find that, you might see with one client that you do one of those more than another, but that is truly like the highest value skill, to kind of be the entrepreneur, the brain and the driving force of the business without owning it, but getting a lot of the upside without the risk. I mean, granted, I'm still doing it, and my biggest burden is that I have to fulfill as much as I do. It's nice just to kind of be, in the front lines and kind of pushing that. So, but yeah, so I guess let's kind of come to this client. How did you? Well, For starters, I will say it was a journey. You set the record for the fastest to close a client. It was 42 hours since joining the program to getting your first deal over the line. And then after that, that client came to pass naturally. And then it was a bit of a run as far as, not only managing things, but I would say just your resilience in being able to deal with the rejections as you were coming to some of these bigger clients and bigger customers. So, well, not customers, but bigger clients. But yeah, if you want to talk about that journey, how was it finding your first client? And then, you had that initial high and win. And then what was it like finding your way to where you're at now?
Yeah, that's a good point. It was quite an undulating journey to get to this point. And kind of starting off, the backstory, and we won't name any names, but
Mm-hmm.
that initial client was a little bit less than I expected in terms of integrity and how they were running the operation.
Mm-hmm.
So long story short, maybe 30 days into the actual operation, everything pretty much went crash and burn. He went dark on Slack, left me
Mm-hmm.
all out, put out all of his fires with clients that he had basically abandoned. And so that was like kind of my baptism in fire about being,
Yeah.
fractional sales consultant. From that, I got a lot of hard insight. In hindsight, I'm glad it happened that way because it really set like a higher standard for me in terms of like, okay, I'm really going to appreciate a meaningful opportunity this time because I know what bad looks like.
Mm-hmm.
So from there, I really just, dusted myself off quickly, continue to start going through the networking protocol on LinkedIn and whatnot. I think a new opportunity came in through that, through my warm network where basically it was the largest, how should I put it? It's the largest education SaaS platform for investment banks on Wall Street. So
Mm-hmm.
without naming any names, they're basically the most well-known training software for new analysts at Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan. And they had, basically tapped my shoulder to have me go through their process to become one of their next go-to-market leaders.
Mm-hmm.
With that one, I was able at every stage, thanks to the implementation plans, all the SOPs, and basically just me,
Mm-hmm.
reinventing a lot of the assets that you had built out for us in the program. I was able to just get ahead with flying colors against all the other candidates until the final round, where I got
Mm-hmm.
the tap on the shoulder, where it's like, "You're 99% of the way there, Desmond. All you got to do is fly from Rio de Janeiro, well, Sao Paulo at the time, Sao Paulo, Brazil, to New York, and meet the guy in person and shake the hands, and we're done deal, right?"
Yeah.
Of course, I went in knowing that it's never that easy.
Right.
I got all suited and booted, took my flight out 10 hours from literally the next day from Sao Paulo,
Mm-hmm.
Manhattan. Going through the streets in Manhattan, it's raining, it's snowing, it's sleeting, and all this good stuff in the middle of the holidays. And long story short, I sit into this loud, bustling cafe, not too far from Penn Station in Manhattan,
Mm-hmm.
sitting there right with the CEO that I've seen on video for the past decade.
Mm-hmm.
And it's pretty much, just this, it's such a noisy, distracting environment. He's in the middle of the hustle and bustle of like thinking about his next client at Deutsche Bank down the street, that he
Right.
really pays attention or is present for the conversation. And
Mm-hmm.
2 days later, I get the email that, hey, we're not moving forward. The CEO didn't give you the green flag. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's about the journey. I mean, it makes me think back to like even my story, where sometimes you get all the way there just to realize that sometimes it's best not to meet your heroes.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
think the thing that I definitely commemorate is just I think how far FSC can take you if you let it. Because even that in of itself, while it might not have worked, just seeing, and I would say from my perspective, looking at what you were going through or what you were doing, you kind of cut through with ease, just in terms of the practicality of how well accepted the math, the models, the implementation plan was, as far as just putting you together as like, oh, this is a plan that makes sense, and the numbers seem to back it. So it wasn't hard to get up to the top, but it seems like they more dropped the ball, if anything, on that. But that wasn't the first one. There was a couple as well. I think there was another one that had work to do where they were in the advertising space with media buying. There was a couple large opportunities, a couple shots at net, but
Oh yeah.
yeah. Well, so, and then coming to this more recent one, the Y Combinator deal, after that, all the way to New York, that deal falling through.
Yep.
What came after that? And then when was the Y Combinator?
Yep. Yep. So, I think right after that financial one, the following one was, mediabuyer.com. That was a great one. I think just I didn't have the kind of the niche background that they were looking for, but other than that, 9 out of 10, right? Then we come to the Y Combinator opportunity. And so that one really just came serendipitously. I honestly was at a point where, ironically, I was kind of detached from doing a lot of the high volume outbound and networking that I had been doing previously in the program, and kind of just taking a seat back and really focusing more on MMA fighting than anything, which is one of my pastimes. And this just basically came through, got connected with, one of the recruiters on LinkedIn. They really liked my profile. I immediately started to, dive into, building out the business thesis for them, building out different sales letters, just different preview assets, as we discussed, to kind of show that competency and show that, hey, this is kind of a simulation of how I would actually run the playbook. It was, love at first sight, more or less, like throughout the stage of the process. And that you're really in a good spot with an interview process when, champions within the interview process are really like helping you out and really, kind of advocating for you behind closed doors. And so I could sense that was happening at every stage. Everything about it just felt right intuitively. I think what really won them over is just, as they put it, just the overall business acumen. And I guess something that you've called out for me for quite a while is just, I guess, my austerity, or how I show up with my executive presence, is how they describe it. So
yeah. No, you win that. You win that with flying stripes and colors. Like that I'd probably say is one of your specialties. Now, do you think that their receptivity to like the stuff we teach in FSC was because of the fact that it was new? Because like why do you think they were so receptive of what we teach in FSC, which for those of you guys who don't know is this remote closer model? We have a couple different names for it depending on what market you're going to, but effectively remote setters and closers, very lean direct response advertising, call funnels. Why do you think they were so receptive of that?
Yeah, great question. I think this is very relevant for any potential FSCs that are interested in applying these protocols to tech and VC-backed startups particularly. I think what's interesting for startups, especially when you're aligning, directly with the founders and those types of personas, is that they inherently have these very meticulous hiring processes where they're trying to screen out people who just plug away and like can't really think critically. And they really want builders, even for their individual contributors. I think a lot of people don't really understand that about a startup. You're not really stepping into a normal functioning company. You're stepping into a company that is literally like a freakish science experiment or venture capital.
With a ton of money.
Exactly, that have millions of dollars in funding. In this case, 60 million plus, that they need to burn in a 5 to 7 year time horizon to accelerate growth at a abnormal rate, much faster than what you see in even the high ticket space. And so with that said, they need people that they can trust to be resource allocators, not just in terms of actual capital, but in terms of people, in terms of marketing and sales assets, that know how to build processes. And again, think cross-functionally, not just in their one lane, but kind of that holy trinity: product, marketing, and sales. It's the same thing for every startup I've ever worked at. And I think especially for a startup of this pedigree, they really appreciate someone who can show that, again, they're thinking in first principles. I think the velocity is another aspect, like the speed that you taught me to operate at, and making me realize that what would usually take me a week or a month to do, I can probably do in a day. I can probably start thinking in hours and minutes, right?
Yeah.
That sense of urgency combined with the critical thinking, it's hard for them not to give you a look.
Yeah, no, when you put that, was incredibly well worded, and I'd say it's magnetic. I mean, I like the urgency piece. One, startups just want someone, at least, really most businesses, and a lot of what takes to succeed in FSC is you have to have this ability to really just kind of solve things on the fly, solve things really, really fast, but build solutions that I think, as you had labeled it, greatly was the cross-function element. You can't think about businesses in a single domain. Like, sure, you might have a trick that you do in a sales department or a way you operate as a salesperson that is highly unscalable and has no utility or relevance, or there's a lot of data that's being missed that could be given to other places, such as marketing or to the success team. And so being able to connect all three of those worlds and think holistically, just it builds for a stronger business. And especially in a role as important as the one that you're filling, which is the growth. I mean, you have to really think about, from each customer, how does that impact the marketing and how does that impact the handoff? And that in of itself is, I mean, that's the most important skill. I mean, there's more ideas than there are people that know how to take them to the market. And so if you know how to quickly build something on the fly, yeah, it's unstoppable. So, well, I think with this, also for people that are curious, what was like how much time did FSC like command of you? I think a lot of people are always curious about, is this a very full-time? Am I, working 40, 50, 90 hours? Like, granted, you're with a startup now, so I think that's probably time intensive, but I guess maybe during the 6 months or 7 months prior.
Yeah, absolutely. For me personally, I found it to be very high leverage and time efficient. I tend to, just work smarter, not harder anyway. So my whole, protocol for ingesting everything is to basically take high signal inputs, which in my words would be your videos and course material in the Word docs, pump that into PDF format in ChatGPT, and it can compress all that information in literally seconds. And before you know it, you've gone through, 10, 20 hours of coursework within a single weekend and really kept a lot of the core insights just distilled down uniquely for you. So it didn't take me much time at all.
No, that's incredible. And then when you were working with clients, how much time would you say you would allocate towards one client on average?
On average, as I started to get into the flow of it, I would say it ranged anywhere from 10 to 20 hours a week. Just because, on the higher end with 20 hours, when I was still trying to figure out a lot of the processes, trying to understand them critically as opposed to just, trying to plug and play. Once I got the hang of it, I would say sometimes less than 10 hours a week.
Yeah, no, definitely. And how would you say this FSC stuff compares to just being a account exec, or maybe more traditional sales roles for someone who's maybe looking from the enterprise perspective or B2B and is wanting to leave that?
Yeah. So, now in all transparency, with the role that I'm in, it is technically an account executive role with this startup. But what's interesting, and I want to highlight about, again, with specifically in this niche of like VC-backed startups, is that an account executive, not a traditional like just smile and dial account executive or closer like you're used to in high ticket. They're hiring literally, in many cases, like Ivy League level talent. They bring you there intentionally because they need you to quarterback multiple aspects of complex deals. And so you're not really treated like an individual contributor so much as you are almost like a growth consultant, so to speak, where you have to think critically about how to wedge the narrative from, kind of like our technical like API integrations in my case, and weave that into the constraints that, our product manager has when they're trying to think of like a developer roadmap for the next 2 quarters, synergizing that with, some of the BDR and appointment setters goals, and then also making sure that you're able to, accelerate deal cycles and build out SOPs as you're doing it. So it's really 4 jobs wrapped into one when you're doing startup account executive roles. And that's why I kind of see it as really more than just that.
Yeah, and I think that's another important note for anybody watching this, which is the broader market doesn't think in terms of fractional sales consultant, growth consultant, sales consultant. They still have to think in terms of these standard naming conventions and job descriptions. That's just because it brings the business order on paper with how they're going to do their payroll, HR, and all that stuff, and how people can make sense of it who don't have maybe the same background as we do. But more often than not, you can find incredible FSC opportunities where you are doing the FSC role, but you just might have to sacrifice the ego of having a specific title. I've definitely had that even now with one of my larger clients. I'm still technically, I think, like on paper, a sales manager, because that's the only way they can really like string me into what their operation is. But I do the full suite of FSC. I have the meetings with the executive team as if I was an FSC, but I just have to fit that label. And, once more, I think Musk had a quote that's great, which is like, labels don't mean anything anyways for companies. So, yeah. And I think another one, when did you know to make that switch into something like this?
I knew really around like last summer. It was even something for years, years that I've been kind of cooking on. I just knew that I had a lot more urgency to get it done, for a number of reasons kind of involved with, just personal experience that I had. I went through a bit of a health crisis back in 2021 while I was living in Medellin. And that completely changed my outlook on business and life. So really just like a newfound urgency in a, you know, an imperative to get it done today as opposed to the next 3 years from now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and so I think with that, the next 3 years from now, like, what do you kind of see over the horizon? I know that you've got this incredible opportunity with you, but what kind of comes next in the world of, being an elite FSC?
Yeah, for sure. I think, well, 100K months, effortlessly would be nice, just like your level. For me, particularly the, sales FSC, all of these mechanisms really are mean to an end of me getting to my end game, which is, more or less to get into more of the private security sector.
Hmm.
I'm very curious about, getting into the intersection of private security, private military contracts,
Hmm.
that nature, getting into more like geopolitical, sort of territory. So,
Hmm.
um, maybe a buyout of an SMB security firm, and then, turn it into kind of the mechanism that I want it to be. That's probably what's in store for me next.
Yeah, no, that's incredible. There's no money like government money, right?
Indeed.
So,
Indeed.
um, well, sweet. Well, yeah, I mean, this has been absolutely incredible, Desmond. I appreciate you making the time. And yeah, once more, the work is all of this worked because Desmond worked. As much as I provide the insight and perspective, once more, I just have a huge admiration, respect for. I just think your relentlessness to the protocol or process, as he talked about in his story about his kind of immediate high of getting into something and then that coming down and then having a couple of harsh rejections along the way to finding where he's at. I mean, of all the people that have been through it, I don't think there's anybody that's had as much direct kind of stomach punches for the amount of investment into deals and seeming sense of security as you have had. But I don't think also anybody has come out the other side with as grandiose as an opportunity as you have. And so, it's like the price that you pay for the result that you get. So truly, once more, just a strong kudos for that. What would you say for anybody who's a skeptic, either of just like FSC and what it is, and then also if this is something that even makes sense as far as a career jump?
Well, I'd say to them that, kind of to your point, it really is all in the implementation. And, so, with FSC or with any course or protocol that you get into, your speed of implementation is ultimately going to decide, how quickly you get those results. So if you have probably the number one advantage of a startup or individual operator is speed. So that would be the number one piece of advice I have for is like move fast on the information, implement quick, and you'll start to see the results fast.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Certainly. Yeah, no, love it. Well, yeah, you heard it here first. That's been Desmond. And yeah, welcome to the elite once more. I guess we have to create a new tier with this because, you know, two-time Hall of Famers. So, but yeah.
I want that gray hoodie, that gray, not gray half zip. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll make another tier. Oh, and yeah, briefly too, if you want to show other people your jumpers, what you get for making it to the
Yeah.
club. So
I chose the
sweet.
last name versus the first one.
Yep, FSC for the win. All right. Well, it's been incredible. I'll see you guys in the next one. All the best.